That's a C in case you can't tell. Today I am once again in Mimic Week, attempting to imitate the style of Shannon Wheeler, author of these amazing books. Shannon Wheeler's got quite a varied style, but it's all the thing that I appreciate about it most is his very strong line work, and the fact that it's one of the reasons that I like doing pure black and white work, is because I think it's down to the form of comic books. This is just a sort of example pieces that I'm going to try and work from to get an idea of the style. Obviously I have all the books, but I think I spent yesterday flicking through too many books and not doing enough actual drawing. I'm just going to do the single face today because although, you know, Shannon does do some very simplistic faces in places for background characters, it's more this kind of highly rendered close-up style that I'm going to try and go for. And you may note that this character, Too Much Coffee Man, doesn't really have a sort of typical head shape. I think this is by design. Obviously, you know, as you can see here, Shannon is capable of correctly using the sort of formalist style of where planes of the face go and, you know, shading appropriately. Too Much Coffee Man in particular is a kind of heavily stylized and yet somehow hyper real shaded character form, and I like that, and that's what I'm going to be going for. Obviously lots of fine line work, so I've got additional pens today for working from. But before I started, I just wanted to where is it? There's a reason that I record things and record these videos, and it's partly down to something that I remembered from this section in particular, from the Parade of Tirade, where three artists are discussing their audience and who they like to imagine watching them draw. So one of them has like a ghostly figure, a sort of guardian angel who appreciates their drawing. One of them likes to imagine their family watching them draw to appreciate it. But then the character who is essentially a kind of this flat-headed looking chap here, this is sort of a stand-in for Shannon Wheeler himself, who says that he imagines himself at the centre of an enormous arena packed to capacity with all of his fans. An image of what he's drawing beams from giant TVs at either end of the stadium, and everyone cheers every time I draw a really good line. And that's that's me. That's why I like to record myself drawing, because I like to imagine a million screaming fans. And you've probably already seen that I've got this out, because the only way to draw that kind of Too Much Coffee Man style face is to do a really distended expression. You can see that there's some, you know, incredibly intense faces going on here. Look at the teeth on that. That's more tooth than face. And so I figured that the best way to capture this style of art would be to do this expression. I might drop the glasses and just go for nose, mouth, and kind of key it in. But one thing to note is that the proportions in these images are kind of stretched. Even in the regular people's faces, you can see that the mouth goes way further out than the sides of the eyes. And so it's going to be big round eyes, it's going to be large frowny mouth. I've no idea how this is going to turn out. This may end up being absolutely awful, but I do know that I need to start with large bulgy eyes, because that's kind of the Too Much Coffee Man style. The mouth is almost certainly going to be the defining feature of the face. Nose in between, and we're just going to try and I'm going to rough this out first and just So actually, it's a really wide nose, isn't it? Where's my eraser? I may have done this too close up. I'm gonna. While there's still light pencil lines, I'm gonna go back. Today's ambiance is traffic noise out of a window in New York City, by the way. Just for anyone who's playing along. There's so much stuff on YouTube that's just like 10 hours of beach noise or traffic noise or wind blowing through the trees in the mountains while rain falls. So I'm going to move the eyes up a bit, make them a touch smaller just to... So quite a wide nose, because the nose has to interface with the eyes, and then... Right. So I feel like the eyes should be larger than that, actually. Yeah. God, this is going to be this is going to be a strange one. So we have to properly. This is the thing: is that the proportions are out of whack, but the detail has to be there. So I have to correctly capture the sort of shape of the nostrils. And the shading as well, when I come around to doing the ink, has to correctly identify. So I'm going to have to make a distinction in this between where the hard lines go and where... Probably have to answer that. So I did notice actually the other day that when you consider the shape of this, there's kind of an inner line where the shading starts, but then the nostril runs right up against this edge of the nose. Not quite so much on this side though, because it's off to one side. But still, there is this very much that kind of shape to it. So of course in this I'm aided by the fact that I've done this already. Like this face. That's another thing. As far as I can tell from the images I've seen, Shannon Wheeler never draws irises. Always goes straight in for the sort of maxed out pupil. And the lighting is interesting as well. It tends to be a kind of heavily structured lighting. So hairline down kind of this way. And no eyebrows either. Not on too much coffee, man, anyway. Occasionally you see like the... Actually no, because what you see from the eyebrows is this sort of thing. But because these eyes are sort of wide open, there's not going to be an awful lot of that. See, if I add eyebrows in there, it gives the wrong expression. Because it's meant to be just plain, straight, wide open, circular eyes. No, you can't fit eyebrows in with this expression. Right then. So here's where it gets difficult, because we're going to have some hard lines, but we're also going to have to do a lot of shading on this, a lot of hatching. And herein lies the issue, that I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to do that. I'm not an expert at hatching by any any account. I do a little bit of line work here and there, but it's not my forte, let's say. So I know that I'm going to have to hatch in here and in here. I know that there's going to be a lot of kind of shaded wrinkling around there. I'm going to need a bit of shade to sort of define this part of the chin. Hair comes here, we need hatching here. Also here. Should I put the glasses in? If I put the glasses on, how's that going to look? I think the glasses might look okay actually if I do the hair over like they are there. You notice I'm doing this very roughly. I'm trying to just get the... I've drawn a hard line there, but that's not going to be a hard line. The hard line is going to come down this way. So the hairline is kind of an upsweep there, but also that's shaded, and that comes down here, and then it does curl the whole way. It's basically that is the line. I'm holding the pencil so far back so I can get this sort of loose style. You know, it wouldn't surprise me actually, looking at this now and looking at the way in which the face distends, it wouldn't surprise me if Shannon Wheeler was one of the influences behind Rick and Morty, because there's a very similar feel to how the eyes sort of shape up in that. Yeah. See, I feel like that's all I'm going to need. I feel like that's it, and then this I will do with sort of rounded shading here to kind of get that. See, I do actually have, this is a thing that Too Much Coffee Man has as well. If I don't know if I can get this close enough. There's a little wrinkle on the other side of my nose, makes it look like a little butt, and Too Much Coffee Man's got the same thing, it's just there. So I feel like the shading needs to represent that, but not too strong, because if it's too strong, it'll look ridiculous. I mean, I do look ridiculous. This is Septemberk after all, but this kind of, it's sort of a hard line there and the shading above. That's one thing we need to decide, is how exactly these things are going to be represented in shading. I want to figure some of this out before I actually start to turn to ink. So we have the underside of the lip, but then we also have a kind of lightly shaded... Except no, because that suggests that it's a wrinkle that way, when in reality it's a wrinkle this way. That's where that shading has to go. This will be shaded all in under here. Obviously nostrils completely shaded. There's a slight line there. These hard lines end kind of there-ish, but that shading goes all the way through. So before I turn to the ink, I'm going to examine this. You see, There's a very structural feeling to it. There's a very architectural kind of lighting. It's like a, oh, what did I forget the first name, Hogarth. I've got this book by a guy who does figure drawing, and he refers to it as sculptural light, where the light doesn't really emanate from a light source as such. Like here, you kind of get the impression that the light source is coming from this radio, and here it's kind of coming from the television. But for a lot of these images, the light is literally just coming forward from the camera. And because the light is coming forward from the camera, the places where you get shadows are kind of just in the sort of the crevices where light disappears into things. So there's shading around the eyes as well. And even the eyeballs are shaded, which is a really odd one, but there's a kind of so on this there's clearly a preference of light coming from this direction, and that's how you get this sort of reflective thing. Here, of course, the light is coming from this direction, because I don't know if you know this or not, but you can't really see it reflected in my eyes, but I'm looking out at Niagara Falls in this picture from a very high hotel room window. So I feel like there should be a kind of a reflectance on the eyeballs almost to try and get this style in, and that will then shade out from that. That may end up looking terrible, but you know, I'm stretching myself here, so to speak. So let's aim for the stars. Yeah, that's what they say, isn't it? Let's aim for the stars. Okay, I'm going to get my initial line work in, and then how long have I been doing this for so far? 17 minutes. I'm going to start with the initial line work, and then we're going to see where that takes us. I mean, the one line that we definitely know has to be completely solid is the mouth line. And also these to a degree. I mean, it kind of helps that my face in this image does look a lot like Too Much Coffee Man. Let's get the glasses in, since we're going to do those. I've come to realise that I would do a lot better if I actually had like a solid table rather than just holding a clipboard, but so these glasses here disappear behind the hair, which is fine, we can do that. Okay, slight misalignment. I'm gonna yeah, definite misalignment there. I'm going to go with it though, because now that I'm in ink, I don't really have an option. And then we're going to do the outline of the eyeballs themselves. This one's going to be a lot easier. get that in there first and try and work backwards from it. I'm going to do in that line here, I'm going to hold myself to doing that shading now, because now I've got to. Right. We did well with those as hard lines before. I'm also going to harden up that line there and this one here. I'm going to shade the back edge of those, as it were. Right. I should probably check who that message was from. So, I have a decision to make now. Am I going to try and do the hatching with this pen? Or am I going to go for super fine liners? Like, you know, I've got to really, haven't I? I'm going to go for the 0.7mm. For reference, this is what the 0.7mm looks like. So, the first most obvious place to add shading is in these areas of the face here. Maybe underneath this line. And also under the nose. But the first place I'm actually going to start doing the shading is on this part of the eye. Because this is the bit that I feel I have the best reference for. So, if we know it has to be completely light by the time it reaches there. And does that follow the sculpt of the eyeball, as it were? Kind of does. So the lines are kind of radial, the hatching lines. So we have this kind of very faint by that point, but they get darker as you come further in. This is the way that I tend to shade things, by the way. You may have seen this with some of the stippling, is that I will start with the lightest area because you can always add more darkness. And I'll try and build up as much as I can before it starts to look too dark. See, now that looks wrong as it stands, and the reason that looks wrong as it stands is because none of the rest is shaded yet. Hopefully when the whole thing is shaded, that's going to look right. I kind of hate that I got the glasses wrong, because I feel like this might end up being an otherwise fantastic image but with bizarre looking glasses. Right, now that we've got that, we need to start shading everything else. So we need shade on the other side of this. And it's all done with the crosshatch, isn't it? It's all and also, now that I think about it, some shade on the mouth itself, especially in these kind of corners. It needs to let's go for this wrinkle first though. Right, let's work on the really dark areas now. This video is going to end up being like 80% hatching, I can just tell. Okay, that's darker than this at the moment, so we need to darken this up a little bit more, add a bit more size to this dark patch. There we go. Maybe create an actual sort of darker area right in that corner. I'd be fascinated to know how many other artists turn the page in the way that I do. There's a lot more shade on this side. Yeah. So there's, although Too Much Coffee Man doesn't have hair, in other images, none of which are on this page, you see characters that do have hair, and it tends not to leave shading, but the hair doesn't come over the face. Too Much Coffee Man doesn't contain that many female characters. I mean, there's Too Much, what's her name? Too Much German White Chocolate with Almonds woman. There's the female artist from that comic I showed earlier. But as a rule, there's not that much shading on them because they're not drawn in this style. It tends to only be Too Much Coffee Man and Too Much Espresso Guy who are drawn in this particular style. But everywhere that something overlaps, there is shading on this image. So I feel like I should hatch from the... I need to hatch around the eyes as well to give some idea of structure from sort of shade from the eyeball. And also this area of the face. I'm going to do this area of the face first because I feel like this is the bit that was missing the most from the last time that I did this face. I did a few experiments digitally, not on paper, on what it would look like if I shaded this area. And what I found is that it would actually look better with this area shaded. But I hate going back to old works and altering them unless it's just like a minor, I missed a line here kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is add some initial shade. I got to admit, this is not how this is how I cross hatch. This isn't how Shannon Wheeler cross hatches. I know it's an attempt to mimic the style, but I'd have to learn a whole new style of cross hatching and get good at it for one face. And I don't have the time to do that in one day. So. Sort of starts all the way over here. In fact, it kind of starts even this far in. Like you can see it all the way over. There is shade from the hair all the way down. If you look at Shannon Wheeler's work, the cross hatching is all very it's very geometric. Although yes, it follows the form and the shape in places. You see lots of individual like squares because the way that he's done it is to. I'm actually going to draw on my reference sheet here because I just printed this myself. He'll draw like little sections of lines like this and hatch over them in a sort of basket weave pattern almost. I think if I did that, it would end up looking. I mean, it might end up looking better than this, but. Now, do I want to shade above or below the mouth? Shannon Wheeler doesn't actually shade the mouth at all, except maybe in the corners. Does shade around the eyes, though. I was going to do that next, wasn't I? I was going to shade around the eyes. So I feel like, because there's a very much a feeling of the light coming this way, that the shading on the eyes should initially be on this side. I know I really shouldn't answer my phone during these sessions because it's a distraction. But the thing is, I know that there's a chance that any message coming in will be from my wife asking if I'm okay, and I have to respond to those. Because if I don't, she's going to assume, possibly correctly, that I'm having some sort of cardiac incident. Because it's happened before. I'm getting sloppy with this hatching, this isn't good. Come on, focus. So because there's a general sense of direction from the light coming this way, as well as shading these parts of the nose, I need to shade a little bit under here. course I forgot this is sculptural light, so if it's sculptural light it needs to follow both sides of any curve. So this whole section needs to have a degree of shade. And there's this little wrinkle here. Okay. Right, now because we've kind of defined that we have a direction of light coming from here, there is a lot more shade on this side. So it's going to start the same here, but then as we work it down into this shaded part of face here, this shade is actually going to continue all the way up to here. You know, the more I think about it, the more I'm not sure if I ever actually made this face before I read Too Much Coffee Man. Like I can trace the origins of this face back about 10 years. The very first time that I did a face that looked like this on camera was on a work trip. We didn't go to this specific place for work. We'd gone to San Francisco for the Game Developer Conference, and we went to a place called the Exploratorium on one of our days off. And in the Exploratorium, there's an area where you could have your photograph taken, and it would stick a little name tag on there. And I thought it would be hilarious to pull the most Muppet-like face that I could and make the name tag have a reference to Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, which, if you haven't seen it, is a fantastic sort of YouTube series. Sort of a puppet style. I guess it's kind of like Muppets creepypasta is the best way that I can describe it. Increasingly, I feel like this would look better if I just hadn't done the glasses, but you know, that's just life. So the hair, I'm going to have to do the one thing I said I wasn't going to do. I'm going to have to do a deep dive into the books to try and find one of the characters who has more hair. And that's frizzy hair on that character. It doesn't really work for the shading style. So that character has long hair. See, dark long hair, you define it with areas of light, which I normally try and do. Light long hair you do with sort of a few structural strokes. God, look at that. What an image of beauty that is. Oh, love it. So yeah, I feel like I should be defining the hair with a fatter marker first and then add shading afterwards. So the kind of lines that I had been doing before and then add some additional shade to it. So I'm going to come in and do the shade with the fat lines first. Now this looks awful right now, but I'm banking on something here, which may pan out, it may not, but let's call it an experiment. Because Shannon Wheeler has never, at least in the works that I could find, and the books that I have, has never drawn hair like mine. Therefore, I'm kind of making this up as I go along. But I think if I do the fat lines first and then start to add in additional shade in places with this, because there's a darker section here, and there's a darker section just sort of there. If you can see, my dog just came in. I feel like even though it doesn't get lighter there on this image, it does look better when it gets darker here. So I'm gonna mimic that here, and I'm also going to do something which worked out really well on the last image, which is tousling the hair a bit more there where the edge of the glasses should be. I feel like that would actually work better with a straight line around it, you know, an actual solid line to give it a kind of edge to feast off of. Also, I'm going to thicken up this line here. That's one thing that's great in this art, actually. Not in this art, but in the art of Shannon Wheeler, is variable line thickness. You've seen in some of the pictures. Oh, somebody set up a firework in the ambient noise. Shannon does a lot with, I think, either brushes or brush pens, so you get this variable thickness of line. And in some of the pictures it's used for great effect with the shading. I don't know if there's, yeah, you can see here that this kind of you know, it's not really that evident in this one. That there's a great picture. I'll try and find it in a minute once I've done this. Which, if I start to do this kind of thing again, another mimic week on perhaps a different subject. It'd be great to revisit Shannon's work and do some of the sort of the brushwork type. Maybe how I get myself set up with an actual drafting board and a proper space to do this instead of just, because you couldn't use brushwork on a thing like this. It'll run down, you know. You got to use graphic pens on a thing like this. I think, although I'm not quite happy with it, I am going to call that a day. Yeah. I mean, when you look at the work here, when you look at the things that Shannon draws, Too Much Coffee Man literally has no chin. Like, that is the underside of a jawline there. The chin is kind of where the teeth are. Again, underside of the jawline, no chin. And even in images where there is a chin, the eyes are very close to the top of the forehead. It's all lower half of the face. So I don't feel so bad about that being disproportionate. It's sort of part of the image. I wish I'd started a bit smaller, actually. Although I do enjoy this close-up of the nose. I think that's great. I do wish I'd started a little bit smaller. Just to, you know... Actually, we're not done yet. Because we need a little bit of reflected shadow just off of here. When I say reflected shadow, I mean, like, yes, we have a deep crease there, so there's definitely shading in the deep crease. But with sculptural lighting, you need to shade both sides of any crease, because the light is essentially hitting anything which is straight at the camera. So if there's a curl coming away from a deep crease, then that needs a little shade as well. Yeah. Okay. Time to erase the pencils and see how this nightmare looks. I feel like the eyes are perhaps the least successful part of this, even though that's the bit that I was most confident about. So yeah, anyway, the thing in San Francisco was it was fun. But more fun than that was the fact that when I did this face, I didn't realise it was going to appear on a huge screen alongside where the computer was, with the name label on there. And so we got a photograph of, like, there was a camera that took the picture and it put it on the screen, and we got a photo of the screen afterwards. But the great fun was waiting for it to come around so we could take that picture. It was showing all these kids' pictures that they'd done as they, you know, they'd all done sensible pictures or maybe silly face pictures. But when this came on, the original version of this face actually looked quite angry. It was quite a cross version of this face, whereas this one looks just sort of bewildered, which is how I've settled into it now. But the angry version of this face, for a child at least, is terrifying. So that was fun. You know, here's a couple of changes I'm going to make to this, just a few last minute alterations. I'm going to continue the mouth down right into that crease, and I'm going to deepen it a bit. Specifically so that I can shade in there. I feel like that's the only part of the mouth I'm not really happy with, is that that's... That kind of wrecked it actually, but oh well. Live and learn. I don't think I'll be replicating this style much more, but it has given me a chance to work on some hatching. It looks a bit scratchy, which I guess is okay. The problem that I have is that the hatching doesn't really approach the lines in places. It's sort of... it nearly gets there, but not quite. So it looks like it's not so much hatching right up to a line. It's got a kind of a halo around things, and that's not good. Because when there's a halo around things, it has a tendency to look like it's not actually shaded from the thing. It needs to look like the darkest part is in the deepest crease, not just off the edge of it. So that already looks better. Part of me wonders if this shade should go all the way around, actually. Just add a little bit on the near side as well. Instead of doing it as a structural one, I'm going to do it radially. Yeah, I think that does actually help. I'm going to do the other one as well. Yeah, that's a lot better. Okay. That's me doing the face in Too Much Coffee Man style. Nice. Tomorrow we're doing, on the list I've got Rumiko Takahashi. I might have to delay that one because I haven't found enough reference material. I forgot that I don't have most of my mangas anymore. Very sad story. I sort of, some of them I loaned out, some of them I gave to friends. I lost a bunch of comics when I left university. So I don't actually have that much manga. I think the only ones I've got left now are the Clamp ones. So I won't be able to do the thing with a big stack of books either. It'll all be digital references like this sheet here. But we will endure, and we will have a good time of it. Yes, we will. I will see you then.